Your city, your sound, Newport City Radio.
I'll try and answer them all.
Awesome, okay.
I'll try my best.
Okay, so firstly, what is your name and what is your role?
Okay, I'm Councillor Debbie Wilcox and I'm the leader of Newport City Council.
Okay, what does that involve?
It's a fascinating job and no 2 days are the same. For over 30 years I was a school teacher. I taught at Hartridge High School in Newport for many years and then I worked up in Pontypridd. But for the last year I've been the leader of the council, and for 4 years before that I was a cabinet member, firstly for leisure and then secondly for education. When I became the cabinet member for education in 2014, that was such a big job that I had to give up the full-time teaching job and just concentrate on the politics. And in the last year, I was lucky enough to be selected by my fellow councillors in the Labour group to become the leader following the retirement of my predecessor.
Why do you think you were chosen?
Well, I like to think that I was the best person for the job. At that point, I'd been a councillor for 12 years and I had shown my fellow colleagues that I had ability, that I was able to deal with difficult issues, that I'm able to connect with people, and that I've got a real determination to do my best for Newport. So I think a combination of those qualities made people think that I could lead this city.
Sounds awesome. So what is Newport to you? What do you see it as at the moment?
I think Newport it's a bit like that caterpillar turning into that butterfly. We are on the verge of changes that will make longer term benefits for everyone in the city. The trouble is, it's been a long time in coming and we've seen, several false dawns. I remember back in the day when we thought we'd have a whole waterfront here, but unfortunately the Tory government at that time, and William Hague in particular as the Welsh Secretary, stopped that, so the barrage didn't happen. That would have led to greater transformation in Newport 20 years ago. So we've always had these false starts. We couldn't even build a theatre on the riverbank without finding a medieval ship, and that caused a hold up and a problem, even though it's wonderful that we've got the ship, of course. So Newport just seems to have these false dawns and these false starts, but people can see the Friars Walk shopping centre, they can see the changes to the King's Hotel, they can see the other things that are happening in the town centre and in the suburbs. So those visible changes are happening. Of course, it's just my luck, Gareth, that I take over at a time when there's no money in the public domain, when we're into the 8th year of this Tory austerity budget from Westminster. And, I'd really like to have some money to spend on stuff, but it's like what happened in Britain after the Second World War, when the first Labour government, sorry, it wasn't the first, when a Labour government after a long time took power, and in America with the New Deal, we've got to invest money in order to grow business, in order to grow success. This austerity that was started by Osborne and is carried on now by Hammond, it's not working. It's absolutely bringing people down. It's not causing the investment we want. And do you know what? That would be such a key. If we could have major infrastructure projects, if we could have new buildings, new roads, investment in our schools, investment in our healthcare, that's what we need in this country. But do you know what? Everyone's looking over there on Brexit. And in the meantime, this country is not getting what it needs.
That sounds quite tough, actually, to not be given any money. Do you think people blame you for that?
When I explain to people, it's like, okay, I've been, you look at the news and you look at the opinion polls, and the elephant in the room. People say to me, "What do you think about Jeremy Corbyn?" Well, I have to accept that Jeremy Corbyn is the leader of the Labour Party, but here in Wales we've got Welsh Labour. Carwyn Jones is our leader. I'm the leader of Newport. What happens out there in the UK with Corbyn is a matter for concern. I'm not a Corbynite by any length. I didn't vote for him in either election. But as a Democrat, I accept the democratic rule of the party. In the same way, I voted to remain. I now accept that many people in Newport, as in the rest of the country, voted to leave. So I accept that democratic mandate. But don't tar me with that same brush. don't look at the National Labour Party and see that's what is happening in Newport or happening in Wales. In Newport, my party has an excellent track record of doing their best for this city, of bringing investment to this city and running this city in a responsible manner. And that's what I'm asking people to vote for in these local elections. Look at the local record of Newport, look at the local ability, look at my ability. I have shown people this year how I am absolutely 100% on the side of Newport, and I have taken Newport everywhere I can to do business, to deal with the problems we've had because of lack of money. You know, I have sensibly done my best to lead and run this city along with my cabinet and my group to run it in a sensible manner. And I would ask the people to give us a chance to continue to do that.
You feel you have a good track record then?
Absolutely. Look, nobody does everything right all the time. I wasn't a school teacher for over 30 years to know that people don't make mistakes. When I used to have trainee teachers into my department, I used to say to them, it is safe to fail here. It is safe to get things wrong while you're learning to be a teacher, because we can show you then how to put it right. And in the same way in politics. And, you know, I will take criticism from our opponents and I will say, okay, perhaps we didn't get that right. And we need to change things to try and get it better. But essentially, my party, my predecessors, and the people that we've got running for us for this election are you know, tremendously experienced people from a wide variety. We've got people who have worked in the trade union movement, people who are doctors, lawyers, teachers, people who work in industry, people who run their own business. We've got a whole range of people who are candidates and who are currently councillors who bring life experience to the role and are really positive, excellent advocates for their community.
Okay, I'm not sure how it works. Do you have to rerun for your job now, or you still
listen, Gareth, there's no such thing as a secure seat in politics. Okay. So firstly, I've got to hope that the good people of the Gare and Maes Glas will re-elect me. This is the 4th time I'm coming up for re-election for the Gare and Maes Glas, and I hope I've shown the people in my ward over the past 13 years that I'm a good community activist for them. We've brought things to the Gare in that time, myself and my colleagues, and you know, I can honestly say I have never not got back to a constituent who's rung me about a problem. Now, what I've not been able to do always is solve everything for them, but I set that out when they ring me or contact me or come and see me in a surgery. I never promise people that I can do things that I can't do, but what I always promise them is that I'll do my best. And whether it's a planning issue or an issue with antisocial behaviour or difficulty with neighbours, then I have always tried to do my best for them. Will I be elected as leader? Well, I hope that I've shown enough leadership over the past year that when we do get back in, fingers crossed, because, you know, you never know what happens. Democracy's a funny old thing. But if we do get back in and we are the largest group, then I hope that I've done enough to show my fellow Labour councillors that I've led this campaign and I've led the city well.
If you are re-elected, what do you plan to do?
Well, money is an issue, okay? And I'll make no bones about it that whoever picks up the keys of the leader's office at the Civic Centre will have a difficult job on her or his doorstep. Because, make no bones about it, the Tories in Westminster are cutting budgets year on year. It was really difficult to get this budget to work this year. And in the health service, you see, they can go over, they can go into the red, they can spend and spend. In local government, you have to set what's called a balanced budget. So I am not allowed by law to spend a single penny over what I'm allocated. So with that balanced budget in mind, I have to make sure that you know, that the books tally. There's nothing in between. It's just, you have to get that money to count. And the money we get is from Westminster. Westminster Tories send the money to Cardiff Bay, to the Welsh Assembly Government, and they send the money to the councils. So we can only get what they send us. And of course, the thing about the total budget is that Newport has historically got what's called a low SSA. That's a standard spending assessment. So we are already £8 million underneath what the government say we need just to carry out the services we've got. And why are we £8 million underneath? Because for many, many years, probably when you were, when you were a little baby, actually, Gareth, it's that long ago, but for years and years and years, Newport had either a very low council tax increase or a 0%. And those were the decisions taken at the time. Those were the good times. There was money in the economy. We had a Labour government in Westminster and things were looking good. And so my predecessors felt that we didn't need to pass on tax rises to the people of Newport because we were doing okay. However, that has now caught up with us. And so those years and years and years of zero council tax increase has meant that Newport actually has less money in the kitty than it should have. And we'll never be able to catch up because can you imagine if I said to people, right, we need to have a 40% council tax rise? Blimey, they'd be rioting in the streets. And quite rightly, because you can't impose that. So that's another reason why Newport is behind. You have a house in Newport on a bandy council tax and you pay about £300-400 a year less than if you were in Caerphilly or Torfaen. So, we are way behind that. And that, again, that's all about the budget. I can only spend what I've got in my purse.
So, do you think the Welsh Government shouldn't be in this chain where, the process of the Westminster giving you money, do you think they should be eliminated?
No, because that is their whole process of being. And in fact, I have to say, what the Welsh Government do is they act as a bit of a shield and a bit of a barrier for us. Because without the Welsh Government, we wouldn't have the extra funding that we have had for healthcare, for social services. You look over the border in England and you see how poorly the councils are funded for social services and for education. I'm a governor of Gare Primary School, and one of our governors there, he's a teacher in Bristol, and he said at a governor's meeting the other night that that at a local school next to him, the staff had to do a sponsored run to pay for the boiler to be replaced. I mean, goodness me, we're absolutely not at that stage of things in Wales yet. And in terms of social services, the funding that the Welsh Government, they've just brought another £20 million into the pot now for councils to put into social services, whereas social services in England is at the point of collapse. So I'm very glad we've got the Welsh Government because they are acting as a buffer and as a barrier to the worst excesses that the Tories in Westminster are giving us in Wales.
Right, so I've got some questions from Facebook and Twitter here.
Okay.
First one, how have you found your first few months leading? What are the pros and cons?
Okay, well, it's been 11 months now. It's gone very, very quickly. The pros are that you genuinely feel that you are doing a good job for the people, and local government is the most on the ground and the most people-facing part of government. So whereas my colleagues in the Assembly and in Parliament perhaps don't meet their constituents daily, I do. I'm in Maesglas and the Gare every day. I'm in the town centre every day, and I am meeting the people that I'm making the decisions about, and I think that's really great. So, and people are generally very friendly and genuinely very supportive. You get the odd critic, but that's life. And do you know what? Social media, wow. Sometimes I think we should call it anti-social media because there's nothing social about it. So I certainly hear what people are saying of that side of things too. Are
you more for going out and meeting people face to face than using social media then?
I do both actually. Okay. I was a media studies teacher for many, many years. Oh, right. So I was an early adopter of all this. And I get it. I get how it works. But I think there's nothing like... I tell you what I do as well, is that if I will not do back and forth on social media and back and forth on Twitter, but I'll contact people personally and say, you were saying this about me, would you like to have a talk, or would you like to have a discussion with me? I'm known to do that.
If you had a magic wand or endless cash, what would you spend the money on?
Look, it has to be about, right, social justice is the heart of everything that my party believes in. Whether you like the leader or not, we're all about social justice, and it's got to be about giving people the best start in life. Okay, I say in our manifesto for Newport that we will support people with the quietest voices, all right, and the smallest purses, because it's not about if you've got a loud mouth and you can shout off about stuff, or if you've got plenty of money that you can throw around the place. Everybody needs an equal voice, and everybody needs to be deserve to be treated equally, fairly, and with respect. So I would ensure that there is enough funding for education, there's enough funding for social services, that there's money put into business and development opportunities, because if you don't have the business aspect, then things won't grow. I'll give you a perfect example. We haven't got much money, okay, but we have to make these decisions. So Newport Market is something that is of great interest to this administration and to my administration, and for the past year we've been ploughing as much money as we can possibly afford. It's not enough, but it's as much as we can afford into refurbishment of the market toilets, heightening the advertising, making sure that new stalls go in there. We had the pop-up business school there for 2 weeks recently. It was absolutely fantastic. I judged the competition on the last day, and it was supposed to be giving 3 winners free market stalls for 6 months or 12 months. Well, we had so many entries and there were so many fantastic winners that in fact we got 12 new market stalls. So we've got the main winners having the ones for a year and 6 months, and then we've got 9 other let's say, sub winners getting market stalls for so many months. So we've got 12 new market stalls going in there. Fantastic. Now, if I could do that, if I could do that times 2, times 3 with more money, obviously we would. And in terms of real investment, do you know what? I would absolutely love to see the Westgate Hotel refurbished, brought back into use, whether it is a hotel or a training centre or a museum for the Chartists. But let's get that part of our town centre as up to speed and as refurbished as we can. What we can't do, Gareth, is bring it back to a Victorian commercial shopping area as it once was. I would say to you, Gareth, do you purchase things off the internet?
Yeah.
Okay, so you do now what an awful lot of people in this country do. You don't go into a shop, you go to a particular retailer, probably beginning with the letter A and ending in N, and you buy things, yeah? So do the vast majority of people in Newport. So we've got to look at renewing those uses for that part of town, for those shops, for those areas, because we can't live in the past. We've got to look forward to the future. And talking about the future, I'm very excited about the digital industries that are coming to Newport. That is another massive way forward for this town. The new industries, the digital industries, I don't even understand it. They say this catapult and goodness knows what, and these wafer thin things that are going to supersede the microchip. Newport could be the new Silicon Valley. Now, don't laugh. It's absolutely possible, because some of the stuff I've been seeing with this new Cardiff City Region deal that Newport is very much a part of, the industries of the future are there on our doorstep, and we could easily see that happening in the next decade, where Newport really turns that corner.
Can you tell us about any of these technologies?
I'm no expert, but I've got people who are experts, and I've got people who are absolutely, busting every gut to make sure that whatever comes here, it comes to Newport. For example, there's the partnership, there's the Wesley Clover stuff that, comes out of, that's the Sir Terry Matthews empire. And you've got the University of South Wales with their cyber digital security course, and the synergies there. One thing's moving on to another, but certainly I can tell you very much in the background that there's huge opportunities for us to move into this digital area, and Newport is very well placed. We're the gateway, you see. We're absolutely that corridor between England and Wales and the Midlands, and so you can get anywhere from Newport. It's a really great place on that network, and it's a great place to live, of course, isn't it? We've got everything here. We've got the city centres, we've got the urban, we've got the rural. Who would want to live anywhere else?
Do you believe that, given recent headlines, Newport's nightlife is in any danger from the next potential Labour-led council?
I believe you're probably referring to the dispute at the moment between Mr Harris and Mr Hayward. Yeah. And that really is a matter for two Newport businessmen to deal with. We're obviously involved in terms of being the planning authority for such things. But that really is, that particular dispute about those buildings at the top end of town are a matter for two private businessmen. How
do you feel about the lack of advice, guidance, support and awareness for young LGBT plus people, and how do you plan to tackle this?
Right, I think there can always be more support for any underrepresented group across the city. Clearly there are marvellous organisations like Stonewall, of course, I think it's Stonewall Cymru, that exist. What the council can't do any longer is do everything that it used to do. What we have to do now is work in partnership with various organisations. Indeed, like the organisation that's in this very building, SUREC is a wonderful example of a partnership that we have with the council. So specifically, I would say the council could help to support that as part of a partnership, but we just don't have the funds in order to be able to fund everything. So I think you need to go to specialist providers like Stonewall, and then the council, keeping racism out of, show racism the red card, SUREC, LAMI, Women's Aid, the CAB, these are all people that we partner with, and that would be another example of where we could help and support in partnership, but we don't have the funds to do anything majorly or specifically.
Okay. How are you going to properly harness and lead Newport's regeneration in terms of economy, environment, and social, etc., to really create a vibrant and feel-good city with the great image it deserves?
Well, I think I've answered that in various answers that I've had in this really extensive interview. It's going to be social justice has to be at the heart of everything that we do. Coupled with that, we need to have economic vibrancy. We need to build that economic platform. We were the first council in Wales to introduce the Fairness Commission. So in terms of environmental and green issues, the Fairness Commission absolutely keeps us on our toes, because every budgetary policy we test with them, and we make sure that what we do passes those tests of fairness and whether it's equitable. So we will strive to do all of those things, and as I've said previously, economy, business, social justice, it all has to be tied in. We're on the verge. We just need to keep our nerve, and we just need to keep going.
Do you see the other 21 local authorities in Wales as colleagues or competition?
Well, we've now moved into a different era. At the moment, we've got something called the White Paper going through the Assembly Government, where it looks at the future of local government in Wales. And I've been very privileged to attend the WLGA over the past year. That's the Welsh Local Government Association, where I've met all the other 21 leaders of the authorities, and some of them are not all Labour Party. Clearly you have a combination of parties. But what we do is that we get on very well insofar as we all have the responsibility for delivering local government services to the people of Wales, and therefore that responsibility, it's probably actually the most polite part of government that anybody would see. Because if you switch the television on a Wednesday at midday, you see Prime Minister's Question Time with the most horrendously bad, I would never have had that behaviour in my classroom, Gareth, I can tell you. Most horrendously bad behaviour in the House of Commons. And then you've got the Welsh Assembly Government, which has always been, you know, a very reasonable forum, but they've got some new people in there now from different parties who are behaving disgracefully. And in fact, one of them, the leader of UKIP, was censured by the presiding officer last week for making a remark about suicide of Eluned Morgan, the member for Mid and West Wales, talked about Brexit and talked about how she could, you know, how she could look her teenage children in the eye about, you know, this happening to them and their future. And Neil Hamilton said, well, there's always suicide, which I think is appalling. And that kind of language and that kind of behaviour has no place in any parliamentary institution or any government institution. So what have we got? Well, we've got, you know, a democracy where we can agree to disagree. And that's really where it needs to be.
How do you plan to tackle antisocial behaviour in Newport?
Anyone who knows me from the days I was a teacher in Hartridge will know that Miss Wilcox took no messing. She was is what they'd say to you when they see me now, 40-year-olds grown up with their own children. Do you know what? I absolutely believe it has to start in the home, right? It has to start with parents taking responsibility for their children and for their youngsters, knowing where they are. What are they doing out at 10 o'clock at night? What are they doing hanging around on street corners? It has to start there. And what we should be doing then is filling in the smaller gaps in partnership with the police, with making sure that these hard to reach youngsters who often need support. Do you know, I had a fabulous meeting this week with the director of Prince's Trust Cymru, Philip Jones, and we were talking about new ways in which we could again work in partnership with the council and with Prince's Trust, and talking about these very hard to reach youngsters who have no ambition, often no confidence, have come from a very unstable background. And he was showing me the statistics where Prince's Trust Cymru work extensively and with these youngsters and turn their lives around. And the success rate is remarkable. And that's what we need to do. So on one hand, the big stick is really to the parents to say, sort out your children. Do not let them hang around on street corners. What are they doing out at 10 o'clock at night? They should be home. And the second part is, for those youngsters that really need our support, we need to work with them to show them that there's a better way. There's a better way of doing things, and there's a better life out there for them.
What plans do you have to get all schools in Newport to take up the Daily Mile?
Well, I think we've got some fantastic schools in Newport. All of them are fantastic in their own way, and some are more fantastic than others in some ways. So I really don't think it's an issue. Do you know, I'll swamp you with figures now, but 52% of the primary schools in Newport are green. That's the highest category. It's the highest number of green primary schools in the Greater Gwent region. So, you know, the people who judge these things tell us we've got excellent schools. I know we've got excellent schools because I've visited almost every one of them. And the head teachers, I'm sure, would take that up, as they take up so many wonderful initiatives that are for the benefit of our pupils.
The budget that you've set for schools in Newport, will that let down children?
I've talked in previous answers about the difficulties of budget setting and the fact that I have to set what's called a balanced budget. All I would say to you, as I've said to anyone who's asked me this question about schools over the past couple of months, you know, I invested my life as a school teacher. did it for over 30 years. I'm well known in Newport as being a teacher. So why would I not want to give the maximum amount of money that I could to schools. Of course I would. But I can only give what the government give me. It's as simple as that. We have had to cut nearly £50 million from Newport's budget in the last 5 years. And I just try and explain it as simply to people as this, right? 5 years ago, I had £100 a week in my purse. Now I've got 60, right? I can't do the same with 60 as I did with 100. And it's not me not wanting to give money to schools. It's the Tory government not giving me the money to give to schools. It's as simple as that. But what we have got in Wales, we've got no academy schools where private companies run schools. We've got no grammar schools where children are selected by ability. And we've got all through comprehensive schools where everybody is accepted irrespective of ability, and everyone is pushed and supported so that they gain the best possible outcome. I think what we will see over the years are fewer teachers at the top end in management structures earning lots and lots of money. There was a report in the Times Educational Supplement only last week by somebody who was a top guy in the English system, in the inspection system, saying that, you know, we have 2005, the year 2005 levels of management structures in schools, and that is no longer commensurate with the money levels that are put in school budgets. So I'm afraid the days of having people at the top end, you know, so you've got your head teacher, your deputy head teachers, your assistant head teachers, your associate assistant head teachers, those days, I'm afraid, are no longer supportive. We need to spend the money on people in the classrooms and not on expensive and largely over complicated management structures.
Will there be any plans to help and support a legacy of pro sport in the city?
I'm a huge supporter of sport. You wouldn't think it to look at me, but I absolutely see. I will always work very closely with sports departments in schools because I was head of the performing arts faculty. So, you know, art and culture and sport went together. I was, of course, the cabinet member for leisure and culture, and I was the person that invented Newport Live. And I still sit on the board as a board member of Newport Live. We've got a fantastic set up there, and I've also put it in the Newport Labour manifesto that we will protect professional sport in this city. When you see how, you know, I taught Christian Malcolm in Hartridge. What a fantastic advocate for this city. You know, Christian was. We called him Flash in those days. That was always his nickname. And he would always be in my school productions as well, fair play. So it was art and sport meeting. Sport is a vital component of what young people and older people should do. And when you see what Newport Live does in terms of its volunteer capacity, its sport output, I think we've got a really good, secure future for sport in Newport.
I didn't know you created Newport Live.
Yes, well, Newport Council created it, but I was the cabinet member, so I saw it through into leaving the council and becoming a standalone non-profit organisation, and that's what they do. And there's some excellent people work for them. In fact, I was there at a meeting just on Wednesday night down in the Dolphin Suite at the pool, and blimey, it isn't half hot at the top of that pool. It really is. But it was great to see all the youngsters there doing their swimming lessons and competing and so on and so forth.
How do you feel about hosting an international music festival in Newport?
Well, again, music has been a great part of my life. I'm not a bad singer. Many people will remember me from the days of playing the guitar and singing when I was in Hartridge. If we could create it, if we could promote it, I'd be right at the forefront of that. Of course, we used to have the piano festival, and that was something that we held for many years. But it's a case of working in partnership and sponsorship. That would be that would be my concern, is because what I would never want us to do is say that we could do something and then not see it through to the end. It has to be something, you know, from day one, it has to be viable. But, you know, let's look at all these possibilities. What a wonderful idea. Let's, you know, there's Cardiff Singer of the World. Why not have something similar badged for Newport? You know, when we have the British cycling team coming down to the velodrome, I coined a phrase for that when the Olympics were in London, and I said, Newport, we're big enough to cope, but we're small enough to care, and that's why the British Olympic cycling team love to use us, because they get first-class facilities in Newport, but they also get an absolutely marvellous sense of support. So there we are.
Have your candidates signed contracts to support their party?
When they are successful, the candidates will become councillors, and councillors will sign a Labour Party contract. Yes, that's absolutely true. That's something that's brought in by the National Party. And it's actually brought in by the Welsh Executive Committee, and that was brought in 2012 to ensure that you had a certain level of responsibility. Now, I know that some people might find that odd, but I would say, well, you know, if you become employed by someone, you sign a contract of employment. And what that contract says, quite simply, is I promise to do my best. That's generally what it is. And in terms of promising to do your best, it's about saying, I will attend meetings with my constituents who have put me here. I will attend meetings at the council. And then, you know, that's about it. It's just promising that you're going to do a good job. It's almost a bit like the Scouts, you know, I promise to do my best. Dib dib and all that, because there's nothing more to it than that.
Why don't you allow public questions at full council?
Well, we do allow the public to question us, but not in the context of full council. Public questions aren't allowed in Parliament. They're not allowed in the Welsh Assembly. So they're not allowed at local government. Now, other people might take opposite views on that, but, you know, all our decisions are open to public inspection and to public accord. Everything is published openly. We're open to freedom of information requests. So everything is in the public domain, and all questions can be asked via your local councillor, and those questions are answered, and everything's there to be published.
How do people get hold of local councillors? So what's the process for getting your questions asked? Well,
we've got the Newport City Council website where details are published. Now, we did have people's personal addresses on there until about 6 months ago. But in consultation with the other party leaders and the leader of the opposition, I took a decision to withdraw people's personal addresses because one of our councillors suffered a very nasty arson attack and had their car burnt to the ground outside their house by a particularly, it was, you know, obviously a criminal, but it was in retribution to something that had happened. So, and taking the advice of the police, I took that decision to take people's personal addresses off the system. However, at the moment, with election stuff going out, obviously people are putting out their personal details. But in any case, you can email the City Council, or you can ring on 01633 656 656, and councillors can be contacted that way. In the same token, when people develop relationships with their residents, and they will, they will give out their personal details. But I think everybody would agree with me that if you have your car burnt down to the ground outside your home, it makes you feel less safe. And I felt that I needed to take a decision on behalf of everyone that I could not put people's safety at risk, because of course members of parliament and assembly members don't publish their home addresses. But as community leaders, of course, at local government, you know, we're much closer to the community, so that's a little more difficult. But council website, council phone number, and your councillors will get back to you.
Has the Labour Party been taken over by the hard left?
No. No, absolutely not. I mean, there's a myth that's put out there. You see, the thing is, Gareth, right, when you're in opposition to whoever it is, you can do or say anything about the people who are in power. And there is this myth that's circulating with some of our opponents that Newport Labour Party, Newport Labour Group have been taken over by, I mean, it's just too laughable for words. Yeah. I've already said earlier in this interview, I did not vote for Mr. Corbyn, and I do not agree with his views. However, as a member of a democratic society, the people voted for him twice to be leader, and I accept that he is the leader of the UK Labour Party. But the leader of Welsh Labour is Carwyn Jones, who I do agree with, I do get on with, I am on first name terms with, and I support the stance that Carwyn Jones has taken in taking Wales into a social democracy. And I'm sorry, I just have to look. And of course, you know, there are people in Newport, in Cardiff, in Swansea, whatever, that do agree with Mr. Corbyn, and I respect their views. But the majority of my colleagues in Newport are very firmly centre ground politicians. That's
good. Do you think Corbyn is hard left then?
I've no idea. Okay. All I know is that when I look at his record in Parliament, over the many years he's been a parliamentarian, he's often voted against the Labour whip, and he's often voted for what I would call, left-wing policies. So I respect his views, but they're not mine.
How much has Labour spent on hiring media consultants?
None. Okay. We don't hire media consultants. The Newport Labour Group have a variety of people who work for us in an election campaign, in the same way as other political parties have people who work for us. My colleagues in Swansea, Cardiff, Wrexham, you know, it's custom and practice when you're running a campaign that you hire people in to do the job for you. It's like, you know, I can't lift a finger in my house to paint a wall or to fix a tile on the roof, so I hire people. So if we need people to do a particular job for us at a particular time, then we do that.
Why is your manifesto short?
Well, I've got 7 pledges, so, you know, that's fairly detailed. What I will say is that the detail that I've put in our manifesto, that we collated, the manifesto took nearly 5 months to write, because I consulted every single Labour Party member in Newport and held a series of public meetings, and then we refined it in the Labour group. And then several of us wrote parts of it, and it came down to one document. If you swamp people with tons and tons of information, you know, are they going to read it anymore? What I've put in there, I know we can fulfill. And I wasn't going to put anything in there that I didn't think that we could do. So it runs to 8 pages. I would say that was a pretty substantial document.
How long are they usually then? What's the average?
Well, I think we had 6 pages last time in 2012, and we had a storming victory. So I'm hoping 2 extra pages will give us even more.
When did you personally hold a ward meeting in the ward you represent?
We do them on the last Wednesday of every month.
Your city, your sound, Newport City Radio.